So again, thank you so much for joining. I appreciate your time very much. Today we will have a webinar for 1 hour and 15 minutes. I'll try to make it a little bit shorter so we end up on time. And during this time, we'll be exploring the different topics of FashionTech Sprint and my experience as an educator, what actually worked nice, what were the things that I had to learn, and some challenges. I would like to, of course, present to you the students' work. I'll talk a little bit about the FIRES framework, which is a framework that I use every time that I'm creating any educational learning experience. I'll share a little bit about the curriculum that I've used in FashionTech Sprint and the future of Makeful that I have co-founded. Let me start by telling you a little bit about myself. I have quite of, I would say, untraditional journey in towards education. I always say that my mission and purpose is to bridge the gap between technologies and people. So every job and every experience that I had was very tied up to education. I've started my career in tech. I was working at IBM where I was working as a developer advocate, and my role was to showcase and to other developers, educators, students, and C-level managers how they can use AI technologies that you at that time IBM was developing for their purpose. And we co-developed with my colleague a Czech version of a TJ bot, which was a robot that showcased, and it was a small MVP of robot that showcased all of the AI solutions that could be used either in school environment, but also for the projects for enterprise. Meanwhile, I also co-founded a company called Code Rebels, and the mission of Code Rebels is to bring modern technologies, the modern technologies to young minds. And the students, the kids, were usually in the age between 6 and 16 years old. And my role there was a education consultant slash chief learning experience designer, which is a very fancy way how to describe a person who is in charge of curriculums and teaching. I did really enjoy the work. It was a wonderful, meaningful work, but I always wanted to do fashion. I just didn't had the courage to pursue fashion. So when I actually took the first step and overcome my fear, I went to Institute of Fashion Design and did my course in fashion design here in Prague. And since I had fashion and tech, I was looking for a place where I could merge it. So I did my postgraduate studies in Textile Academy and Fabric Academy, where I developed my haptic sound suit that was generating sounds based on the touch and movement of the dancer. But I was already prior that very fond of fashion tech, so I one of the projects that I've also done are a smart sportswear for runners. Now I'm on the mission to have more girls passionate about STEM because I want to see more women who are co-creators of our world. Why do I think it is important, and why is it important now? Well, I think that with the speed as the technology is developing, and all of us have seen or used the AI agents, and either it can be ChatGPT or Gemini and all of the other forms of the AI assistant. I feel like there is no option for girls to opt out from learning like digital skills and tech and be interested in these topics. And I've heard a lot of parents and sometimes even educators saying, oh, it's okay, they don't have to learn it. She's a girl, she doesn't need it. She doesn't need to know how machinery works. She doesn't have to be good at chemistry. She doesn't have to understand it. But I think that nowadays, with the technology, how far it is evolving, how quickly it is evolving, uh, this mindset could potentially really harm the future of the future generations, and uh, the young girls who won't be able to find the career they want to, or compete in the industry that is going to be elevated with AI technologies. But it's not just about the future and about the young girls. It's in general about the lack of representation of women in STEM fields that harm us and influence us in general around the globe. I've seen and read a lot of research papers that say, for example, in healthcare, that there is a lot of a lot of women get um, they got a false treatment because the doctors cannot interpret the data correct in different areas of ADHD or cancer, or even some heart disease, and therefore the women get either they get completely mistreated, or they get false prescriptions that harm their health. And I think that having more women in the room, and having more women that are focused on, for example, data gathering and finding ways how we can make these areas more important, and also like elevate and look at the data that are important and represented by women, could really help us, all of us. Um, that's why I have decided to focus on fashion tech, and I'm proposing fashion tech as a entry point for larger number of girls. Um, Not only the ones who are uh, traditionally and just naturally drawn to these topics, but a larger amount of girls who maybe feel like that STEM fields and STEM subjects are not for them, because they feel they are more on the creative, on the side of humanities. And I think that there are already a lot of wonderful organizations and missions that are working on creating environments for girls to be interested in STEM subjects. What I have encountered, and what I think is sometimes an issue, is that a lot of these organizations still lean on the educational content that has been created and produced more for by male for and therefore interest to be more interesting and captivating for younger boys. And I think that fashion is the area where traditionally uh, more women and girls are interested in, and it could be a very nice bridge from to attract more girls into this STEM world. Um, let's talk about then, how does this missions and questions that I had in my mind translate to Prague Fashion Tech Sprint. So let me just tell you briefly about how was Prague Fashion Tech Sprint in general. It was a 14 days intensive learning for 120 hours. And we had 6 students. We had 8 students and 6 novice, so people who were beginners in the area of 3D printing, and 2 professionals. One of them was a PhD student and educator, a teacher, and the second one was a professional lady who did 3D printing in her as a professional in the fashion industry. Uh, we had 7 girls and 1 guy, and it was very nice because usually in the STEM area the subject ratio is 1 girl per 3 men, and I was very glad to uh, switch the ratio and have 7 girls and 1 guy in the room. Um, and of course, at first my idea wasn't to create a space just for girls. I was inviting anyone who feel that they would like to explore the ways how you can use technologies and different machinery through the creative process. But it ended up to be this environment in which there were 7 girls and 1 guy, 1 boy. We had 120 hours. It was a lot of hours of learning, intensive learning, not enough time, not enough sleep, not enough breaks, but it worked very well. During, apart from the workshops, we had certain inspirational talks from award-winning professionals. Students were offered 2 certificates at the end of the program. One of them was by Makeful, and the second one was by Prusha Research, which was one of our partners. And Prusha Research has offered this online basic 3D printing starter course to the students. And the starter course wasn't compulsory. The students could opt in to learn and to explore the 3D printing basics, but at the end, all of them decided not to continue with the online course because they said that the workshops were enough for them to learn the necessary skills. And at the end, all of the students had to present one of their final projects. So what were our goals? Our goals were to boost confidence, of course. I wanted to see students who had, of course, and mostly I focused on those who didn't have any prior knowledge, that they learned and felt confident into using technologies, different softwares, and in our case, 3D printing. Break the initial barriers and help them like make the first step towards feeling comfortable with technologies and softwares. Of course, one of the goals was to develop technical skills, but the most important part was to ignite a long-lasting spark. And by long-lasting spark, I mean I wanted to see, and we wanted to see students interested in the technologies and 3D printing outside and beyond the program. So even if they weren't inside of the program and they weren't kind of like forced, and even though we weren't forcing them, but they weren't inside of the environment when they have to use the area, I wanted to see students be able to use them afterwards on their own without us prompting them to do so. And I must say that we were very pleased with the results. We asked the students, and 100% of them reported gaining confidence in learning technologies. 7 out of them reported that they are using 3D printing and 3D modeling softwares. It's very nice to have the students reach out to me. One of the girls is now working on her final thesis to explore uh, all the filament materials, all the 3D printing materials. She wants to examine them from the chemical compounds, where are they being created, how they are being distributed, and also the sustainability part of them. Another girl is making her thesis around ways how she can create different garments and different accessories using 3D printing. Then the guy who has joined us, he said that he bought a 3D printer and then he was the best investment because he's not buying anything anymore. He's 3D printing and 3D modeling everything. The educator bought herself a second 3D printer, which a more advanced 3D printer, and she felt like she said that it was amazing that she felt confident to buy the 3D printer that is not so beginner friendly as Prusha is, and she bought I would say, more nerdy 3D printer that needs a little bit more of technical skills, and she felt confident that she will be able to operate it, and she's already using it in a printing and doing amazing stuff. So for me, it was a very nice feedback to see that they took the skills, but not only learned the skills, but felt like, also they had the spark and felt engaging and want to go more in depth and learn and explore on themselves, which was the best feedback that we could get. And of course, all of them felt confident to use 3D printers and 3D modeling softwares. So how did we achieve that? And when I say we, I had wonderful support from H40, which is a art and digital lab here in Prague that gave us the space. Then Institute of Fashion Design in Prague, Materialistic, which is a company that sells in Czech Republic sells different fabrics and textile, and Prusha Lab, which is a fab lab from Prusha Research, which is a Czech company that produces the Prusa printers. Whenever I'm creating any educational concepts, I try to follow the FIRES framework, and I say FIRES because I like to create frameworks because I think that it's just easier to remember. And when I say FIRES, I mean facilities, inspiration, recognition, environment, and student-centric projects. I would like to tell you a little bit about each part, each segment, and during the segment, I will explain what I mean by the keyword and how did we apply it to the Prague FashionTech Sprint. So when I'm talking about facilities regarding especially the 3D printing, if you have 3D printed ever before, you know that it's important to have a ventilated room because some of the 3D printed materials, not all of them, create fumes that in large amount can be harmful to your health. So you don't have to remember which of the materials are which, but it's important just to know that you have to have a ventilated room. Um, what I also like to do is just separate the space as you would do at your home. So we could have been working in one room, but I asked the H40 to create 3 separate rooms for us. So we have the machinery on one side, then we had the designated area for assembling and creative part and the workshops, and then we had one area when we could relax. And of course, we needed to have like necessary tools, machines and software and hardware, and one educator, which was me, who feels confident to operate and debug. I would say that in general, I don't think that it has to be one person. It can be just one educator who is more on the side of teaching, and then one technician who is helping with the debugging or with any technical issues of the 3D printers. But in my case, it was just me, and it did backfire in the first sprint, but I've managed to tackle the challenge in the second one, but I will tell you about it in a second. So regarding the 3D printers, we had 2 3D printers per one student, but if I was setting this program in a school, I don't think that it's necessary to have 2 3D printers per student. I think that 0.1 printers per student per the class that you're actually teaching is enough for long-term learning. I wanted to have more 3D printers because we had this short amount of time, and it takes a little bit of time to print, to 3D model, but also to print the work. So I wanted to make sure that the students will be able to really reach the potential and their dreams and the designs that they want to create. From the perspective of the tools that we used, the hardware, we had a sublimation printer, 3D pen, then a iron solder with removable tips and interchangeable tips, filaments, clippers, fabrics, some basic sewing, a basic sewing kit, and a laser machine. We didn't have a laser machine in the room with us at H40. We had the laser machine. We went to actually use the laser machine in Prusha Lab, and because we wanted to create the mannequins. And I think that it's one of the project and one of the parts of the program that if you are, for example, in school and if you want to set up this program, this can be omitted because I know it's harder to have a laser machine, or you could get a laser machine with the table size laser machine from, for example, Glowforge, that is offering smaller laser cutters. But it's also possible to join any fab lab with the laser cutter available. From the softwares, we have been using a lot of softwares, but that was one of the things that the students actually did like, that they were able to touch all of the different softwares. So we did use Make Human, which is a software that enables you to create a digital avatars. Then we used Rhino, which is a 3D modeling software, professional 3D modeling software, Tinkercad, a more beginner-friendly 3D modeling software, Slicer for Fusion 360, which is a software that enables you to create files for different machines. So it can be CNC machine, laser, or even 3D printer. Melanode, which is a app program that lets creatives create mood boards, plan their projects, share the work. Canva for graphic design, Adobe Firefly, which is a free AI generating software, which we use to generate patterns for the textile, but also some pictures. Prusa Slicer, which is a software that enables you to create files, G-codes to print with a 3D printer, and 3D Look, a software that is used to and uses AI to take human measurements with a mobile phone. So we've had these designated creative areas and creative spaces. And of course, apart from what I already said, is that you have different areas where you can focus on the work that you want to do. But another nice thing that has happened is that the students, because we have been working some days from 6 hours, some days 8 hours, some days even more, and the students felt like they could be moving inside of the room, from inside of the lab, from one place to another. So they didn't have to like be sitting all the time, so sometimes they could stretch, and it forced them to actually move and to stretch, so they felt like they were more fresh than they would be if they would be just sitting for 8 hours. The challenges were that I have already said a little bit before, that it was at the first sprint I made a mistake, a classic mistake, that I've tried to fix every issue for the student for themselves. So instead of letting them fix the technical issues, I was always there, which made them lean on me more than was necessary. So it created a lot of I would say like pressure on me. I was very, very stressed, not stressed, tired, I would say, from the first sprint, and I learned my lesson. So in the second sprint, I tried to show the students how they can resolve the small technical issues, because most of them were really something that they could resolve themselves. They just needed to, again, they just needed to feel confident that they won't break the machine. And in most cases, you won't, either you solve the technical issue or you don't. So I let them be able to for example, the issues were so small, so it was like screwing the tie, or if the filament gets tangled inside of, sometimes it gets tangled, so they are able also to untangle the filaments and load it again, or if it gets stuck, so they know how to unstuck it. And the second sprint was much better and easier from the perspective of the educator. I don't think that the students, well, the effect that it had on students were that they were also they were learning more. So I feel like it was um, a, even for them, even better experience from the perspective of getting more knowledge. But from the perspective of the general experience, there wasn't much of a difference from their side. It was just a difference from my side, that I didn't feel so tired after the sprint. Another part was that I forgot and didn't pay more attention to keeping, in the first sprint, I didn't pay more attention to keeping the filaments stored, because flexible filaments, they absorb a lot of humidity. So they should be stored in boxes, and then it's harder to print from them the other day if you don't do it. So we had some issues with that during the first sprint, and during the second sprint, I just assigned, again, I assigned the roles to the students and let them like handle and take care a little bit about the space, but also the filaments. And so when we were, for example, leaving the room, for them to feel that they know that they have to like take care of the filament, so they are also prepared for the next day to produce the work. I stands for inspiration, and I think that's one of the most important parts. I think it's very, very important, and sometimes don't have enough room to show the students why they are learning what they are learning and what are the real life applications of the skills that they are learning. And the students told me that they were really appreciated the part they were given the inspirational talks, because they felt like they are learning something that someone is already using in their work, so it's a meaningful skill to learn, which pushed them a little bit further in actually like learning the skill and going further into in the learning experience in the workshops. And the second group was more fortunate because they could also learn from the previous work of the fashion tech students from the first round, which was also very nice from the perspective of the like peer-to-peer motivation. But also it was very, very, very nice to have experts who had a wonderful approach towards sharing their work, and were really showing themselves as humans. So they shared with the students how they're approaching their design process, but also parts like what they feel they could be doing well, what are their preferences and what are not their preferences. So the students realized that there was also this like humanizing aspect of having someone who looks very professional, which they appreciated. So we had 7 award-winning professionals. All of them had shared their journeys. Some of them were fashion designers, some of them weren't fashion designers. And I would like to talk about 3 of them. One of them is Lela Borges. She is a fashion designer from Israel, and she uses coding, engineering, and 3D printing to create her fashion designs and fashion garments. She uses this robotic arm. For example, this for one of the things that she does is using a robotic arm to uh, create dresses, and she uses code to program the robotic arm to be able to follow the body depending on the mannequin that the robotic arm is printing on top. And she got her inspiration for the entire fashion show that she has done, and she won an award for from computing in general. Another one is wonderful Brigitte Koch. She is a designer that a pioneer for 3D printed fashion, sustainable 3D printed fashion, and she also invented the sublet printing method, which is printing with these colorful and creating these colorful prints. And she also has created this 3D printed kimono from this large amount of patches. The last but not least is Batul Al-Rashdan. She's a Jordanese architect, designer, and she is very much focused on creating 3D printed, sustainable 3D printed fashion from sustainable materials like biomaterials. And so she creates different types of fashion. She also creates different type of biomaterials on her own and tweaks the 3D printer to be able to 3D print the biomaterials in the combination with the 3D printer with the traditional filaments or biofilaments. and she also has won an award this year for her beautiful fashion design. Um, the inspirational part, as I've told you before, has brought a wonderful inspiration, but there have been a little bit of challenges. The biggest challenge there was the coordination with all of the speakers, because the speakers were all around the globe. So, and we had to like revolve our workshops around their schedule. Um, and it took a lot of coordination to do so, and it also created sometimes these rifts during our workshops, when we had to like split middays or wait a little bit longer for the inspirational talk. So what I did the second sprint was that I switched to pre-recorded sessions. So I had this session pre-recorded that I played for the students anytime we felt like we need a break, and it worked very well. The speakers were wonderful because they said that they are very open to answering any questions that the students had, and so either the students were writing down some questions, but most of them ended up just reaching out to the speakers and asking them questions themselves. And it was a very nice introduction between the speakers and interaction between the speakers and the students. E stands for environment, and sometimes it can be challenging to create a high expectation environment, but also balance it out with collaboration and support. And what I like to do is to focus more on research-based and knowledge-based learning, and shifting the entire experience from right or wrong discovery to discovery process. So what we did during the Prague FashionTech Sprint was that all of the students, for example, when we were learning 3D printing, 3D printed textile, we the girls were assigned, or the students were assigned to learn. First of all, I've showed them how they can create something very, very simple. But then instead of telling them, okay, this is the settings that you need in order to create a 3D printed fashion, each of you will be a researcher, and you will be exploring different properties that affect the way that affect the print's quality. So one of them got temperature, one of them got speed, the second one got thickness. And instead of me telling them this is right or wrong, they had to explore what actually works for them. And all of the exploration that they have done had to be, or all of the research that they have done had to be documented, and they had to print every sample that they've done, not only for themselves but also for the rest of the group, and share the knowledge with the rest of the group. So that was one of the things that also helped for them to overcome the first fear of not of feeling like, okay, what if I fail in during the process of creating something. um, One of the things that I also very much like to do is just starting with ridiculously small projects, and slowly building up. So when I say ridiculously small, it really has to be very, very ridiculous, especially when you have a room of students, or anyone who is learning and feel intimidated by the technology or machinery. It is sometimes from the perspective of the educator, yeah, like, okay, like we forget how it is at the beginning, especially after a very long time of learning, of teaching, you forget how it is at the beginning. So I like to start with the project that sounds almost like ridiculously easy. What we've done during the 3D printed textile workshop is that we have printed a very, very simple, we have designed a circle, and then we printed the circle which took the students like 5 minutes to do. But it really helped them to like feel like as if they were victorious with their first print, so they can move on and try something that is a little bit more complicated. Let me go a little bit deeper into the program and the curriculum. So I know I've heard in a lot of 3D printing community that you shouldn't start with flexible filaments because it's harder, that beginners should start with rigid filaments. Well, we started with flexible filaments, and I understand why. In the 3D printing community, they say that we shouldn't, because when you print something that is high and with every like layer that you are building up, there is more probability of the print not working very well, and especially with the flexible filaments that tend to like change during the due to the environment. But when you are creating fashion, you usually don't want to create anything high. You want to make a thin layer, a thin fabric, or even if you're making something that is a little bit more bold, it still won't be so it's never that high, it's more wide. And so I think that starting with flexible filaments with the from for the perspective of fashion, is a wonderful first step. And not only that, it is actually harder to print from flexible filaments because you have to learn the 3D printing techniques very well. So when you actually do learn the 3D printing techniques well, you feel very powerful to explore other filaments and other rigid filaments. So all of the students who learned flexible filaments first felt super confident to print from the other rigid filaments. And this is an example of the 3D printed fashion, no, 3D printed textile research that Aleš has done for his final project. He was trying to recreate 3D printed knitwear in form of a tank top, and he was doing research on different flexibility based on different infills and different materials. But let me go back to the start of how did the program started. So we've started with preparing files for our custom mannequins, and that we used to then use as a mannequin to try our designs and to also display our fashion garments on. And firstly, what the students did is that they used the We3D Look app to take their body measurements, because the assignment for the students was to recreate their own bodies in a digital version and then print it. And so we took our body measurements, then we used Make Human to create a virtual digital avatar. We sliced the head, the legs, and the arms in Rhino, and then used Slicer 360, Slicer for Fusion 360 to create the files for the laser cutter. But we just only prepared the files because it takes a little bit of time to work step by step this process, but we managed to succeed in this part. The next day, we did not went to laser cut the body because I knew that the laser cutting, unfortunately, you can only laser cut one mannequin by one. So I didn't want the students to be like sitting bored and looking out of the window. So what we did is that we head back to 3D printed with flexible filaments, 3D printed prep fabrics with flexible filaments, and we just did a small sample, and then the students, based on the property they were assigned to research, they prepared all of the files they were researching. And then the other day when we went to laser cutting the mannequins, when one of them was laser cutting the mannequin, the rest of them was just 3D printing and writing down their research. So as I said, the next day we went to Prusa to laser cut the mannequins, the bodies. And I have a funny story regarding the laser cutted bodies, because all of us, and I did that as well, when we saw actually the laser cutted bodies, what we did, the first thing that we all did was to take the measure tape and start measuring if the laser cutted bodies actually resembles and fits our body, because when you're looking at the perspective of the body that is standing in front of you that says this is your body, it feels almost um, surreal, and we realize how much we have like um, a very bad representation of our bodies in our minds due to the social media and horrible body dysmorphia, because we really thought that the bodies were much smaller. So all of us were like trying to measure it 3 times, and it did really fit. So afterwards, we're just laughing how therapeutical it was to see ourselves in real life, and seeing that we are actually like smaller than we think, and we were just laughing at the end and saying, oh, okay, we can eat now, we are fine, which I always say that it's just hilarious. And I always joke that we should be doing this more for just for the reason just to check back with ourselves that we are okay, your body's smaller than you think. um so it was one of the nice uh coincidences that happened. Then we went to sublet printing, which is the method that I've told you that Brigitte has invented. And it's basically taking the sublimation paper and printing on top of the paper with the filament. With the flexible filament, can be rigid filament, and what it does is that it creates more space for you to print colorful prints, create texture, and not to be limited by the color of the filament. And of course, different filaments uh, will change the result of the subli print, but it's just part of the process of exploration of what color you're trying to achieve, and it creates a very nice textures. The students here were assigned to try AI. We tried AI to create these big patches of fabric. So we designed different, first just random textures, and then we did repetitive textures that could be used to create these repetitive patterns and put next to each other to create like longer and bigger parts of fabrics. So we went there and we created, again, as I said, like research around what kind of filaments work the best, and what kind of patterns were we able to create in order to create like big patches of 3D printed fabrics. The next day, we explored hand 3D printing. Some of the students, we started very simple with just getting a hand of the 3D pen and writing down their names and then we moved to more complex assignments, to taping the laser cutted bodies, the mannequins, and trying to 3D pen directly on top of the bodies. And this can be done either on the mannequins, but also basically on anything that you can tape down with tape measure. So if it can be done with a purse, it can be done with shoes, it can be done with really anything that you think that you can tape down with a masking tape. Most of the students said, when I asked them at the beginning which of the techniques they think they will be using for the final project, and most of them said that they think they will be using 3D pen. And the reason for it was just, again, that they felt fearful about the 3D printers and the big machines, but at the end there was just one student that used 3D pen for her final project, and the reason was just that she really wanted to make something that is handcrafted. So she went and used the 3D pen, and the rest of it, or the rest of the students decided to use a 3D printer. Here are also some other examples. We explored also modular fashion, which is a type of fashion a type of creating different type of creating garments and fashion, and it can be done also with I would say uh, textile, with traditional textile, but also with the it's much better with the 3D printing, not just because usually 3D printing has this non-slidey a little bit firmer touch. So when you create a module or interlocks to lock them together with each other, you don't there is much more the lock is stronger because of the material. And also when you are 3D printing or when you are laser cutting for from normal or traditional fabric, you usually have some residual fabric after you laser cutted your pieces. But when you're 3D modeling part, the module, then you usually just print the entire part and with zero waste. So it's even more sustainable when you are 3D printing. So what we did is that we explored different ways how to create modular fashion, from uh, designing it to exploring like the female to male interlocks, male to male interlocks, female to female interlocks, and the flat modular fashion and modular fashion that is in space. Uh, so uh, girls could explore ways how to create like this modular fashion and how to use them for the final project. In that same day, we also explore assembling and the ways how you can put together 3D printed fashion, because modular fashion is just one of them. You can also put the 3D printed fashion or assemble 3D printed fashion with a iron solder or a 3D pen, or you can even sew the entire piece either on a sewing machine, or you can hand stitch it. The last day, what we did is a project ideation and planning. So the students had to prepare a mood board for their final project. And the first sprint, what I did was that we had a group setting. So I just let everyone present, and then I've changed it to one-on-one session on one-on-one meeting with every single one of the students because it worked better. We had more time to go more in depth of the project, and I could help them with the planning of how to produce the work, because at the beginning, most of the students that weren't so familiar with 3D printing did not know how to what to do. They didn't know what to do, but at the end they had a lot of ideas, but they kind of didn't know how to plan the work and how much material they will need. Uh, during uh, during the one-to-one discussion, they had to use most of the research that they have done during the week. And I forgot to mention that when they were doing the research, not only they had to just write down the documentation and the properties, but they also had to write down how much of the material are they using for the specific for the specific swatch, and how long does it take, so they can be able to plan further a little bit more their future projects. Uh, Student-centered projects, which stands for S in FIRES, what it actually means is just letting the students solve their own problems and giving them space to for them to choose what will be their final project, and for them to choose the techniques they want on their own. At the beginning, only the experts came with a clear idea. As I mentioned before, only most of the students did not know what they want to do, what they want to work on, but helping them and showing them all the techniques and going through all of the options they have to explore really helped them at the end to be able to think about what is the actual work that they want to do. And it was quite easy. As I said, like at the end they didn't have as much problem with coming up with what they want to do. I just asked them a question like what are you very passionate about, what do you like, and how would you represent it in fashion. And usually they came up with wonderful work. We had a short amount of time because for 7 days the students were exploring, and then they had 6 days to, less than 6 days, 5.5 days to actually produce the final piece. So we had to like follow the base framework, which it meant that do the most work on paper. So they had to really like plan the workshop first. Then they had to the project first. Then they had to create some tests. Then they had to present the tests and choose which one of the tests that they have made they will follow and work with to finish the actual garment. Then, of course, if sometimes it did happen that none of the tests worked for them, like they weren't actually satisfied with the results of the tests, so they had to calibrate, maybe adjust a little bit the project or try a different method. And after that, they were able to actually execute. So from the 5.5 days that they had to work and produce, I would say 1.5 day was to just do tests and really figure out and be sure what is the final piece, how long it will take, how much material they need, and how what are the procedures, what are the steps. These are some of the projects that the students have created, and it was all of them have chosen very different approaches. Some of them have chosen to recreate the what we wear in our day-to-day lives. So Alish wanted to make a tank top, Katie wanted to do a 3D printed uh, underwear. Some of them, like Hannah, were more about like how to use the material that we cannot usually work with, because she wanted to work with the transparent filament, which is not something that you usually work in the traditional settings with fabrics. Lucy has taken the um, an old purse that she bought for less than €1, and she wanted to give like a second life to an old purse. So she designed this frame, the holder, and she then 3D printed it and attached it to the purse. So she created like this new look that made the old purse look very luxurious. And she also designed it very smartly, so you can slide the purse in. So anytime you want to, I don't know, use a different purse or just deassemble the parts, then you can just take it out and slide in another purse and just keep using the frame. So it's also reusable and recyclable. So Lucy was very much focused on the sustainability part and how we can give a second life to things that have no purpose anymore. Or there were students who fell in love with the technique. Isabel was very much in love with the assembly printing technique, so she wanted to create a piece with the assembly printing technique and to use the like large batch of printing. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Hannah's project. So Hannah has been, she wanted to create this transparent a corset, and she was trying to balance out the rigidity of the 3D printed and 3D printed filament, but also the softness and the light feeling that you have from the 3D printed fabrics. The piece was entirely 3D printed. She didn't want it to use 3D pen or iron solder to put the parts together. She has hand stitched the entire piece, and it took her about 4 days to, yeah, I think it was 4 days to print all the parts, and the last day she only hand stitched it. She haven't had any prior experience in 3D printing. She was an absolute novice, and I think she did a wonderful work. She has designed the pieces in Tinkercad, so she wasn't using any special 3D modeling software. She just used a basic Tinkercad, and she used about 600 grams of the transparent filament, which is one spool of the recurve transparent filament. And as I said, it took her about 4 to 5 days to do the entire piece. Another project I would like to talk about is Emma's project. And Emma was more on the side of the creative. She created this beautiful costume that she kind of working like she kind of designed by working with the flow. She used 3D printing on textile. She has used the very, very flexible filament A60 to 3D print on textile. And then she has printed these parts, like the white parts that look like shredded bones. She printed a lot of them, a lot of pieces, and then she attached them using a transparent filament and with a 3D pen. And she also has designed these complementary gloves that you can see at the top picture. To make this, it took Emma about 4 days to finish the piece, and she used about 250 grams of filament in total. Last but not least is Isabel. As I've told you before, Isabel wanted to really use sublime printing. She already came with some designs and patterns that she had from home that she wanted to use and reuse to use to create 3D printed fashion. She wanted to create or recreate a tennis sportswear. So she created this shirt and a skirt. And it took her shorter time to print. It took her much shorter time to actually print the work, but she had to do a lot of tests because she was really trying to recreate the fabric. She wanted to be very thin, but also not so thin so it breaks. So at the end, she really ended up printing the entire 5 days, but she did a lot of like research around what are the best settings to create a nice thin 3D printed textile. And to 3D print her the final work, it took her about 150 grams of filament. The last letter in the FIRE framework is recognition. I have read a study that says that 50% of girls feel more confident when they are recognized by their peers. So any setting that lets them like showcase the work they have created among their peers helps them to boost their confidence. We for FashionTech Sprint wanted also the students to experience to get feedback from the experts. So the experts were giving comments on the work that the students have created, and in different ways. Some of the experts decided to leave a video message, some of them has created an Excel sheet, some of them has written a document with some tips and feedback. And the experts received from us the flyers, or I would say small billboards with the work of the students, that this explained the work of the students, but also the students were presenting, and we what we did is that we videotaped them, and then we sent the video with the presentation to the experts as well. So this is the example of the table that we had for the presentation of the work for the people of the from the outside, and the students could showcase not only their final work, but also the test that they've done and some of the work that they have decided to show. And we've printed out their billboards with a little bit about the student, but also they could add some pictures from the mood board or from the process. Some of the students decided to make just showcase a little, some few tests. Some of them had a lot of tests that they wanted to showcase, and it was completely up to them how they wanted to approach the presentation. Overall, I have very nice feedback from the students. They were very satisfied. Most of them wanted to join other programs, which is funny because at the beginning I asked the students, because the topic that I'm most passionate about myself is e-textiles and wearables. And I asked the students if they would like to join the sprints that I wanted to prepare for the October for the wearables and e-textiles and electronics. And all of them were like, oh, well, no, we don't think so, that we are going to do electronics. That's very, really far away from what we think we could do. And after the program, they were asking me like, oh, so when is the e-textiles we want to try, which was a very nice feedback for me, that they feel confident that they can tackle this world. Another thing that happened is that some of the students were talking about the program inside of schools, and there are two faculties who would like to make the program inside for their students inside of schools, and they are recommending the program to their peers. Which takes me to where we are now with Makeful. We have one high school in the US that will be starting the program in the summer, one high school in Prague that we are discussing, and one university in Prague that we are discussing to start the program in the September, which means in the autumn. The same thing in Bratislava. And I'm looking for more schools to help set up and run this program. I really want to help the schools to not only like feed the FIRES framework, but provide confidence and training to teachers, and share the tested materials that I have made for myself, and share also all of the things that I have learned, because there are more tips and more more challenges that I had to overcome. So just share to teachers what are the nice things that I have that they can avoid to do that I have done. And at the end, some of you have already received my email. I would like to run an international contest for students with Crucial Lab, H40, and the award-winning designers from the industry. So if any of you is interested into like running this program on your school, then please let me know, send me a message. I will send you also information at the end of the webinar, so you know where you can reach me. But I also wanted to share with you, with those who don't have it yet, the speakers. I've talked to the speakers and asked their permission, and I can share with the educators and students the inspirational talk. So if you are interested also in getting the inspirational talk. There are 7 of them, 45 minutes per each, to watch the talks or to share with your students, your communities, your institutions. Then it's possible to do so. Just send me a message, or you can even just write it down in the chat, like I'm interested, and I will remember you and send it to you afterwards. Regarding the programs, I would like to, because I started with 3D printing because it feels that's the first easy step, but I would like to create full 2 to 3 years long program. I'm starting with 3D printing, but I would like to move to electronics and wearables. Then the next round should be biomaterials and bioplastics, and the last would be inflatables, which is the hardest, I would say, but after the 1.5 year, or after having all of the modules prior done, it should be a quite easy challenge, a nice challenge, doing inflatables and soft robotics. So I don't want it to be just an one-time experience. I think it would be a very nice program to start with the 3D printing and programming, and moving to programming, artificial intelligence, to some chemistry, biology, and ending with a topic that really just wraps it around all of the topics prior. I'm also building a library of inspirational talks with more experts, but also inspirational students, because there are, of course, a lot of experts, but there are also a lot of wonderful students who have worked on amazing things. So also, if you know about a student at your school that you think they've done something that is very, very nice, it doesn't have to be a huge thing. It can be just a nice thing with 3D printing, or any STEM subject, then please let me know. I want to create an inspirational library for future for not only future generations, but also for our current young generations. One of the students is, for example, Megan, that I will be doing a podcast next week. She's a student that is now currently studying data science in University of Chicago, and she has a wonderful story of how she ended up exploring programming through fashion tech. She started within a coding club, and she was 11, and she said that she learned there like basic skills of how to create websites with HTML and CSS. And then she moved, then she says that she had a huge gap from STEM subjects, and that she felt like, okay, probably programming is not for me. Probably the STEM subjects are not for me. I am more of a creative person. But then she saw a contest of a fashion tech contest that was organized by NASA, and uh, and she was so inspired by the person who said what are all of the things that she can create. So she learned C++, so she can, no, or the Arduino language, um, and she used Arduino to recreate with LEDs star constellations on a dress. She has won the contest. She fell in love with programming technologies, and in general she has actually figured out that it wasn't about the creative side of the project. It was about the feeling that she felt she can actually create anything with programming. So she started to focus more on programming. Today she is a huge fan of Python and R, and she wants to be a data scientist, and she is more focused on. She said that at her future she would like to be a researcher and do research in healthcare to get their data and push a little bit the system forward around the female reproductive system. And why I'm telling you this, I've had a lot of questions around like why fashion tech, and some people are like, okay, fashion tech is nice, but we don't want to have fashion designers all around the globe. We have to like have distribution of people in different fields. And I said, I do understand the concern, but not everyone will be a fashion designer, and it's not the goal to produce tons of fashion designers. It's more about creating a different entry point for girls, and using fashion tech as a means to ignite spark in girls. And it's not about like focusing on the fashion aspect so much, but it's about taking the something that is very relatable and for the girls or for anyone who wants to explore technologies from the creative perspective, and using it as a door to STEM world. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for joining, for your attention. I apologize again for the delay that we had. I appreciate that you stayed with me and that you either joined uh, that late or so early. If anyone has any questions or has any comments that you would like to share, please share them with me. I will be staying with you here until until I answer all the questions. Otherwise, I will wish you a wonderful, wonderful day. Uh, and please let me know if you'd like to get an access to the inspirational talks if you don't have them